Hello, I'm happy to be here from Miami, Florida, IMTC WORLD 2021, and I'm thrilled to have Ned Armand from IMTC. We're going to hear all the story about this amazing company and the work they have done. It's Ned's first IMTC, so we're going to hear some of his points of view, his opinions about the event. So let's start with you, Ned. Just introduce yourself, your background, your history, IMTC, how do your father and you started this company?
Sure.
Give me some background.
Sure. So my dad and I guess it was about 15 years ago, created a product where we aggregated an online trust creation tool that was integrated with a built-in investment module as well as a trustee. So we did that at the early adoption of online checking. I would say there was about 10% of the US that was doing online checking at the time. So it made that kind of really inventive and a difficult launch actually when we pushed that out there. But it put us on the stage and had additional people start to come to us and ask us, hey, can you solve some additional problems in technology, in the trust world, using some of these innovative solutions. And so we started to build products over time and have put those products on the shelf. And we found ourselves over the years doing Latin America, remittance work, I would say more. We were doing neo-banking almost before we knew what neobanking was. So we were building a little technology so that Latin American clients were interfacing with our technology, and then we were tying them in with our banking network on the back end.
Eastern Point Trust, or IMTC, is a trust company. Explain to us what is a trust, because although regulation in different countries is kind of similar for trusts, US, I think, is a special. So is a banking institution, correct?
Well, we're a non-depository trust company, and so we're not allowed to take assets on deposit. So all of the work we do have a sponsoring bank, a custodian. Some of the special things, some of the special powers that a US non-depository trust company has is that we're allowed to keep funds in common. So and that's one of the secret tools that trust companies use to help facilitate access to the banking system. And that's why primarily you see the 5 or 6 or 8 primary trust companies are really the go-to place where Latin American or non-US financial institutions go to have correspondent banking relationship, or I would call it their sponsored bank account to get to the U.S., where it's a little more difficult for those non-U.S. financial institutions to open up a direct account that come through there. And so we use a variety of both trust accounts that we then use those trust accounts to open up bank accounts, but then also the fact that we can hold those client assets in common. And that gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of we not only have just one sponsored bank account for client A, but we might have a variety of bank accounts, but because we can hold those funds in common, it allows us the flexibility to move those funds around from financial institution to financial institution without the client seeing a disruption in their balance and in the trust accounting software itself.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting, especially because I don't come from the banking world. All my experience have been in remittances, in non-bank companies, and we always had to rely on banks, and the relationship between remittances and banks has been, it's a difficult one because of the risking and the banking and all these things that I've been very, very much involved with. But it's interesting to see how things are changing, sometimes not as fast as we want, but in terms of trust and trust companies, is the U.S. regulation with regards to trust companies been the same for those 15 years, or has it changed? I know compliance has changed everything.
So,
that's true.
The compliance is much, the banking compliance, as we all know, that's the challenge that we deal with today. Maybe it's gone a bit too far. We don't see it dialing back anytime soon. In regards to U.S. trust, chartered trust companies, the compliance has been about the same. I would say that it's more difficult to open up a trust company now. The barrier to entry, just like with banking, continues to get higher, and you see more consolidation, just like you do with the banks. I mean, you're losing on average for community banks 2.5% of the small community banks each year dissipate, whether they're absorbed or they just shut down. And so you see that in the trust world. But in terms of just the general compliance, there's been a slight increase, but I wouldn't say it's to the same extent that you see BSA, and the OCC on the banking side. But one of the things that I think, additionally going back to what we talked about before, is that helps us is, as a trust company, you are a U.S. financial institution, right? And you bring that clout, and then you bring, your reputation and your history with you, and that helps you when you sponsor a non-U.S. financial institution and they come with you to the bank. The bank is now looking at you as a trust company and saying, okay, we understand the history, we understand a U.S. financial institution, and we understand the reputation that you have built over the years and your compliance history. And so, okay, we're going to allow you to sponsor, this client and bring them on. And but your reputation is also staked a little bit on that client. And so we want to make sure that we're bringing good compliant clients in with us to the U.S. banking institution. But again, to answer your question, in regards to compliance on the U.S. trust side, it's about static.
And tell me, there is a big taxing component to what you do, and your father has been a person who's been working on tax advice and building the trust funds that manage tax implications with the United States. Tell me a little bit about that, because for me it's very interesting, your background on the tax side and the connection to the trust.
Sure. So again, the trust gives you a lot of flexibility and unique powers to provide solutions that other institutions don't have. And yes, my dad has a brilliant tax mind, and we've created, and I will give him absolutely the credit for going in there and understanding the tax code and producing some of these products. The qualified settlement funds system that we built, and how he's modified that, and he's actually changed the industry. Eastern Point Trust Company is now the #1 provider of qualified settlement funds in the country. He's created a plaintiff recovery trust that address some unfair tax treatments that are happening for plaintiffs and U.S. settlements. He's modified installment sales trust, which is a replacement for a 1031 exchange. And so, those are just some of the things, and we've also done some offshore unique things with some USVI entities and some variety of other entities mixed in with some trust products that provides tax advantages to non-U.S. citizens, whether they're working abroad, primarily if they're working abroad outside of their original tax jurisdiction, or if they're working in the U.S. And so, it's always fun. Sometimes we have the shiny penny syndrome, where we have all of these products and all of these things, but every time we're presented with a new challenge or a new problem to solve, oftentimes that gets our attention. And so, but it's fun. It's a whole lot of fun.
But the interesting thing is that you're a technology guy, I mean, when I first met you, that's what my first impression. I mean, because every solution that you guys build in Eastern Point Trust is based on it has to work technology-wise. You have to. Everything has to be, formalized in a technology platform, so everything is recorded, kept, etc., etc. So that's is that your side in EPTC think and create the system, because I mean, for me, you behave much more as a fintech than as a banking institution, although things are moving forward in that sense. But tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, we hear that a lot. We're and we've had folks describe us, as a fintech company disguised as a trust company, and vice versa. And I don't really know how we got to there. Neither myself or my father were formally, schooled or technology people to begin with, and so this is just something that evolved out of necessity. And we started realizing the efficiencies of it, and we really enjoyed the efficiencies of the technology, and so it continued to evolve. And as I mentioned before, I think we started putting together 7 years ago or even longer than that, a neobanking platform before we knew what neobanking was, right? And so now you hear this, and it's becoming more and more popular, and there are dozens of neobanks out there. And it's, wow, okay, well this is to some degree what we do, but the technology is absolutely fascinating. We love using it at Eastern Point. We're going to continue to develop technology. I've got a wish list. It's really long. I don't know that I'll ever live to see it all completed, but and as many folks here have been talking about, and I had come to this conclusion prior to coming to IMTC here this week, is we've gotten to a place now where doing it, going it alone and doing all of the things, product development, technology development, plus your operational, day to day, you can't do it without outsourcing. And so we've gotten to a point where outsourcing for technology stacks, software as a service, banking as a service, neobanking service is very attractive, and I think it's much more affordable and efficient, and you can run a better shop by outsourcing some of that. And so while we will continue to be a fintech, we are absolutely going to be looking for some strategic partnerships, both with financial institutions that are, neobank related, or financial institutions, or have various different services, and so, cobble those together. And that's one of the things that I've been looking for here, and I've been quite successful in finding some potential partners since we've been here. So that's why I've been very pleased, and it's been a very productive meeting and conference for us. But I've heard it multiple times now, not only in one-on-one conversations, but in some of the panels, that you've got to outsource. So that the old days are gone, from 10, 15 years ago of I'll just build it myself. It just doesn't make sense anymore.
It doesn't make sense, yes. Now let's shift to Latin America, because I know you've traveled several times to Argentina, you traveled recently to Brazil, and you're exploring the market, and I think that's very interesting, because as a U.S. banking institution, of course, all Latin America is based on the dollar. It's the dollar economies, and you are, learning about every different market and the things you as a trust company can, the services and products you can provide. Tell us a little bit about your experiences with in your trips to Latin America and meeting, potential partners in the region.
Well, the first thing I will say that's really important, and the advantage to going down there and being able to then bring the data that I have back, I will address the compliance piece first. One of the problems I think that we have as an industry here, or in banking in general, is that U.S. compliance, the standard rank and file U.S. compliance folks, don't understand how drastically different the business culture is in Latin America. And so that some of the things that Latin American businesses need to do to operate on a day-to-day basis do not make sense to compliance departments. And when they see the information, the documentation that is presented for an individual transaction, sometimes they say no because it doesn't look right to them. But if you understand it, if you spent the time, or you have someone on your team that spent the time to travel down there and actually interview those companies and ask them, walk me through your day-to-day. What is your business activity? How are you doing this? What are the challenges that you have? What are the restrictions that you have? What does your government put in place? And typically that's what it is. It's oftentimes, government currency restrictions, taxation, loss of corresponding bank or whatever the case may be. But once you spend that time, you absolutely, it makes sense, and then you can bring light to your compliance team of let me show you what I've learned. But it also helps, especially with a firm like Eastern Point, where we like to develop new products, put them into production, and then look for the next product. To go down there and ask, what are the challenges you face? What are you looking for? In Brazil, for instance, there's been a new law change there by the central bank, and it's opened up some additional opportunities. And I thought I had a very clear vision on what that opportunity was. And when I went down there, I spent a week and I spoke to a tremendous amount of people, and I understood that I didn't know what the, what the needs were. And so now I understand, and actually one of the things that I'm doing here at IMTC, and it's been very helpful, is to help me find additional solutions that I can bring to the market or put together as a total package solution, and hopefully present that and bring some efficiencies both in timing, cost, and access to some clients down there.
That's great. Before we finish, so this is your first IMTC, your first CrossTech event, let's say. And tell us what are your impressions of the people you have met, the opportunities you have been presented with, your to-do list for the next month or quarter, etc. Tell me a little bit about that.
I was very interested. There is a diversity in the different types of companies that are here. Compared to other conferences that I've been to, and maybe this has something to say about the event that you put on and your networking, the catalyst you have for networking, but everyone here seems to be very, very, very in tune with let's meet as many people as we can. And people are very approachable, and even though we are somewhat competitors in most scenarios, or in some scenarios, we still find common ground to work with, and we're making connections and referrals, and so I would say a magnitude of 3 or 4 times more so than any other conference that I've been to. And so it's been refreshing, and it's nice of how kind of intimate the group here is, and how helpful they are. Of course, we're all faced again with some of the same challenges, yes, right? That we're trying to work together, and so maybe we're an alliance. Fighting this against the same force that's pushing back against us. So that's been great. And I've met a lot of different folks. I've probably got 2 weeks worth of calls, follow-up calls after this. So
great.
It's been very productive. It was a very, very good use of my time.
I'm so glad to hear that, because this industry, in cross borders, and even when I've been in this industry for quite some time, and it's always been about partnering, and that even though companies develop their own networks, it was a company in the U.S. who had to make payments in whatever, Mexico, Brazil, any place, you needed to partner in the other side. So when we started this, is because to be able to do that, you really had to go country by country, finding out who, and it was not very easy to find. In some countries there were foreign exchange companies, in some it was the informal market because there was no regulation about it. In very few countries, there was a bank that was willing to make those kinds of payments. So it was the first, and we grew out of a compliance seminar really, because that's, you know, in the first couple of years it was mostly compliance oriented. The business side started because it was okay, instead of going everywhere, you know, let's meet in Miami and see each other. So the event was built on partnering. Now, it was mostly partnering between a company in one country and a company in another country. Right now, what has happened is really that partnering has become so, as you said when you were telling, I mean, you need to partner, you need to outsource, you need this, you need a payment company, payment processor, software to do this, you connect to API. I mean, it is, I say it is partnering in steroids. I mean, it's amazing. That's just the evolution. I mean, but I think that we grew out of the necessity of partnering across borders to what it is now. I mean, you have, bank interconnecting companies. You can do as ACH, you can do this and that, and everybody, even bill payment has grown out of this industry, top-ups, because there are services for migrants. But it is a complete interconnection. For me, it's amazing because it's a diversification that it's sometimes is hard to put together, you know.
Well, there's so many new technologies and tools that are out there. There's no one that can specialize in them all, and so I think that's one of the things that you see as a catalyst for this, to bring everybody together. You know, crypto, API, cloud computing. There's alternative rails that are turning on now, ACH, the new alternatives that are coming on for ACH. And so there's just as we mentioned, you've got neo-banking, a whole variety of different services. And so, again, there's no way one person can master all of those.
Ned, thank you so much. Thank you very much. I'm glad you're here. We'll be touching base in the future to see how this develops, and I just have to say you have a great team working with you.
Well, thank you.
We love them all. I mean, I think that you put together a great group of people working, you know, with you, supporting your ideas or your creativity. So great for that.
Well, same to you. Thank you. It's a great job, and your teams did a really good job here, and we'll definitely be back next year. And I'm going to bring several of my team members. I'm sure they'll hold me to that. So
great to hear that. Thank you so much.